Something that a lot of people have been uh, pretty upset about at this point is regarding the war in Ukraine, as the Russians might say. They are very, very worried about Putin using a nuclear bomb or putting a nuclear warhead on a missile or whatever he might do. Oh my goodness, a nuclear weapon! Oh my goodness, it's uh, uh, but here's my point. I would be reasonably optimistic about that. I don't know whether Putin is going to use a nuclear weapon or what size it is that he might use. But I want to point out that if he does, it's an act of desperation that will have no effect on the outcome of the war in Ukraine. This happens a lot. This happens all the time when a aggressive power loses and finds out, oh my goodness, things are getting really desperate. Well, then that's when Hitler says, I've got an idea. We will institute the Battle of the Bulge and take all our forces from the Eastern Front, press them over to the Western Front, send our tanks and our ammunition and our material and get it all over on the Western Front, and we'll make it all the way to the sea and anyway. But the whole thing was based on having no Allied air superiority because of bad weather. And it never was a good plan. It was desperate, as everyone saw from the beginning. During the Civil War, many people have said anybody could tell from the beginning that since the North had all the industry and many, many, many more men, that the South could not win. But everything went on for a number of reasons. And the Japanese knew they could not win a war with the United States. It was an act of desperation to attack Pearl Harbor. And Pearl Harbor for the Japanese was a resounding success. But it was an act of desperation on their part. Desperate tactical military offenses seldom make a difference to the strategic outcome of a conflict. But they all seem to follow the same path. One is that the aggressor who's desperate and is trying one last thing will say, our soldiers are men. The Hitler would say, those Americans, those Western, all they care about is money, and we are the master race, and we're gonna go in there and kick them. Hitler was famous for saying about Stalingrad, which was another foolish thing, that as soon as we kick in the front door, the whole structure will fall down. In the South, they said one Southerner is definitely as strong as 2 or 3 Northerners. And another thing that the aggressor would say when he's trying something desperate is, when we go in there, we're going to be greeted as liberators. How many times have we heard that? These are all acts of desperation. Another idea that's in the mind of the aggressor is, once Hitler was saying, if we push west in the Battle of the Bulge, it's they were saying, and definitely Japanese at Pearl Harbor were saying, if we just punch them once really hard, and this may be going through Putin's mind also, and it never happens. Here's what never happens. The aggressor makes this big push that's going to really do this great job. And then the the defending forces are going to fall like a house of cards. They're all just they're going to just despair and say once they see the great German military machine pushing west against them, they'll all go, oh, we give up. We're just, oh. Putin right now may be saying, if I just show him the power of a nuke over the Black Sea or the Baltic, ooh, they'll say, oh, we give up. We're just so scared. Say Putin does ignite a nuclear weapon over a Ukrainian city and kills 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 people. Can anyone in their mind think of a situation that all the Ukrainian soldiers throughout Ukraine would say, oh, that's it. We're over. We're done. We can't do anything anymore. No. My point is that desperate measures don't work. And if Putin did use two nuclear weapons over two cities in Ukraine, the worst somebody might be able to imagine at this point, it's not going to make any difference. It's not going to have any strategic influence on the outcome of war, not to speak of. Obviously, it'll make Putin an international pariah. He already is, but far, far more so. These are situations where the aggressor knows he's really at the end of his rope, and so he tries a desperate gambit, such as Putin and nuclear weapons, and the others that I've mentioned. The Japanese knew they couldn't defeat America, so just hit them hard at Pearl Harbor. Hitler knew he couldn't take the Allied forces, or maybe he thought he could. He was so hyped up on cocaine that he just thought if we just punch them once real hard, they're all going to run away and give up. To finish up, there's a story told of a German POW who was brought into the American post, the American camp, and he was being processed as a German POW. And what he saw in that camp made him realize, this German POW realized, the war was over. There was no winning. It was not possible. What he saw was a row of a dozen American Sherman tanks. Well, Tiger tank is better, most people would say, but here's the trick about those tanks that he saw. They were all sitting and idling away because nobody cared about the amount of fuel they were using. They had enough fuel to let those tanks just sit in a row as the POW passed, and just sit and do nothing but idle and burn fuel. Obviously, the situation was very different from the Germans. On the retreat from the Battle of the Bulge, they had to burn their tanks and leave them where they were and walk, many of them, back to Germany. Desperate plans that are born of a person who's already behind the eight ball, they do not work. January 6th was a desperate plan. And as I look at it, from one perspective, failed miserably. And the men who worked to make it happen, some of them are being sent to prison for a very long time. That's what happens if you transgress the law in a particularly horrible way and attack police officers and do damage to the inside of the Capitol. But it was a desperate move. Trump had been up for the last 2 days meeting with his wacko council, trying to figure out ways he could falsify the election and overturn the results. And this is what he came up with. He loved it, but it was desperate. Desperate measures do not work. And while a nuclear bomb being set off would be terrible, it would not change anything insofar as the outcome of the war in Ukraine.